Hello, hello, y'all. As you can see and about to hear, this is Christine Gotro, and today I am going solo and had to dance with the opening music, even though it's a little tough to dance today. So, we are coming to you for episode 175 today. I'm going to do our official intro and then kick off this show. I am Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, and published author, and an Amazon best-selling publisher and author who helps you upgrade yourself and community care. And usually my co-host is with me and she's not able to be here today. But together we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the 8 dimensions of wellness. And we like to get together every week with special expert guests for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business and relationships and wellness. And yeah. Today is November 6th, 2024. I am streaming to you from Gwinnett County, Georgia, which you may have heard that name a lot on the news last night if you were following the election, and really struggled with whether we were going live or not today because as those of y'all that listen to the podcast, we have been encouraging folks to vote for months and really struggling with some of the outcome last week. Well, last night, not even last week. It's so fresh, y'all. But I made the decision to come live today, and I made the decision to come live by myself um, because one of the reasons I couldn't is my co host were not able to be here with us today. And as a white woman, I completely get it. Like, I'm looking at our numbers, and all our poll numbers aren't in yet, y'all. These are just some of the numbers because every vote hasn't been counted yet. So these are projected. But I just want to share these because I do feel like it's something we need to talk about. And I do feel like it's part of our work here to uproot racism, to uproot sexism, to uproot oppression. Last night, with the projected numbers, 90% of Black women voted for Kamala Harris, who would have been our first female president. Only 31% of white women did. Whew, y'all. As somebody who's been working in social justice for years, as an ally, as somebody who's committed to racial equity, I am still trying to pull apart and process these numbers and figure out our next steps and what do we do, right? What is our work here to really have some of these honest and authentic conversations that we need to have? And also talking about ourself and our community care, right? If you've been on socials today, it's all over the map. A lot of people aren't on socials today because it's really painful. A lot of folks that are in the margins who are scared and nervous right now. So I'll tell you what I did. I went outside. It's not going to surprise you. I went outside and I walked my labyrinth and I sat in the center of the altar, which is a stump that came from my grandmother's house after she passed away. It's a part of a tree that was going down, and this is what I wrote, and I'm going to share it with you, and then we're going to get into our dimension of wellness today and bring our guests up on the stage. Who are we in this moment when our hearts are broken and cynicism is sneaking in to help us side eye our neighbors? I ask myself, who do I want to be in this moment? Yes, there is the part that wants to curl up in a ball under the covers and maybe reemerge in 4 years. A bigger part that gazes out through my tears and feels the resolve in my heart that there is more goodness in this world. Let me look to find it and work towards it. Glasses broken, limbs down, I sit on my ancestral altar this morning. Look for the good. Look for the good. I want to be the light that shines hope in a dark situation, a community builder who reaches out a hand to my friends, family, and neighbors that are scared. Someone who, through their tears, sees the work that needs to be done and to undo years of oppression. Who do I want to be in this moment? Someone being gentle with myself and others in a world that is bruised and hurting, acknowledging the enormous grief of this situation and the gratitude for community and connections that keep me rooted. To what life does this loss call me? As our friend Sheila often asks. Taking a deep breath and singing my prayers for our world from the center of the labyrinth this morning. For all the world, wherever you may be, for all the world, however you may be, I wrap you around with infinite love and wisdom. I invite you to take a deep breath with me. Check in with yourself today. Check in and just be really gentle with yourself. If you want to put it in the comments, if you're listening, you can put it in the comments. You can let us know. Women Connecting Wisdom is a safe space, and it's okay to be present with all that is. Today, we are going to be talking about intellectual wellness. Our definition for intellectual wellness includes having access to different sources of information. We believe in that one, don't we? I wish more people had believed in that one. Intellectual wellness includes having access to different sources of information and develop critical thinking and timely decision making skills. Continual learning through intentional intellectual growth, situations, and artistic creativity can help maintain one's intellectual capacity. Intellectual wellness for the community means shared learning through dialogue around different perspectives or applications of details. So, one of the reasons we decided to go through with the show today is our guest and what we're talking about. We titled today's show Three Keys to Building Your Business Without Having It Run Your Life. And our guest today is Helle Brodie. I want to introduce you to her and get her up on stage. Helle Brodie, as a successful entrepreneur, she has spent 37 years finding solutions for her clients. She has created the systems, structures, and procedures for efficient, profitable businesses. As business owners, we love what we do most days. Yet success is more than just the structures. It's all about creating the freedom to thrive, both personally and professionally. As a business and as a mindset coach, Helle has turned her focus to helping entrepreneurs do what she has done to create the freedom in life and business to truly thrive. Helle combines masculine productivity and efficiency tools with her feminine intuition and mindset tools to tailor her offerings so her clients can succeed. I'm really excited to welcome to the stage today, Helle. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And what you wrote and what you read to us was beautiful.
Thank
I love
you.
it. I love
Thank
it.
you. I know you're zooming in today from Canada, our neighbors
Yeah.
to the north. And yeah, I'm sorry we're a little bit of unruly neighbors right now. So
You know what?
we
We love you anyway.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hala, I am so excited to share with our listeners your story and how you came to the work you do and just who you are. So, will you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell a little bit about how you got here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be honored to. So, a little bit about me. So, I'm very fortunate to live an incredible life. I, um, I live in a beautiful community. Um, and I'm surrounded by incredible people. In fact, the town that I live in, it's called Niagara on the Lake, has been voted one of the friendliest and most beautiful communities in all of Canada. I'm fortunate to live in the old part of town where I back onto 1 Mile Creek, and I get to watch the deer hang out in my backyard, and I get to hear the clip clop of the horses as they make their way into town to show the tourists around. I'm blessed to be able to spend time with my family and my friends and my 1-year-old grandson, who's got to be the cutest little baby boy in the world. I don't have a biased opinion at all. And
I love that.
well, hey, I know, but he is adorable. I get to do the things that bring me joy, like gardening and sailing and going to the theater, and even a comedy now and then, because who doesn't like to laugh, right?
Mhm.
My life is truly amazing, and it wasn't always this way. See, I was running a successful design practice, super successful, and it was my dream. It's everything that I ever wanted. It gave me energy, and I was on the go all the time, and I just thrived on the adrenaline rush of being busy. It was amazing. But the truth was that after a while, I was working 80 hours a week. Yeah, you're nodding. You know this story. You know how that happens because we love what we do. On top of that, I was a single mom with 2 kids who were into competitive skiing. That meant a lot of, travel and time and driving. And my own mother was terminally ill. So it got to the point where I was just stressed and exhausted and overwhelmed all the time. And I was actually living off of the adrenaline. And then I guess it was probably about 6 years ago, I walked into a Starbucks and I looked at the barista and I thought, she has way more fun in her life than I do. I wasn't spending time with my kids. My friends were drifting away, and I was starting to feel alone. And even my hobbies felt more like obligations. So I knew things had to change. When my mom passed, I had a decision to make. Um, Either give up this business that was running my life or figure it out.
Mm.
Fortunately, I decided to figure it out. So I did a deep dive into personal development. I took business course after business course. And I even gained a couple of coaching designations to get this figured out. And here's what I discovered. If I wanted to go from feeling stressed and busy and overwhelmed, feeling tied to my business all the time, to having my evenings and weekends free, earning what I knew I deserved, and really enjoying every part of my life, I had to do 3 things. I had to gain clarity, I had to streamline my business, and I had to believe that I could become the woman who could have it all.
Mm.
It had such a huge impact on my life. I knew I needed to share it with the world. So I've turned it into a system and I've called it the CPU system. Clarity, processes, and you.
Mm.
So
I
that's how I
love
got to
that.
where I am.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Hella, for sharing that. Also, you didn't say in your amazing life, but I have noticed your kitty cat going back and forth for our listeners that are watching. Your kitty cat has come back and forth, like saying, "Hey, remember me?" What's your kitty cat's name?
Well, the one that's been going back and forth, that's Monty. And his
Monty.
sister is Mitzi.
Monty and Mitzi. I have a Monty who is a rescue puppy, who's a half Corgi and half Scotty. I love that you have a Monty too.
Well, and these 2 are both rescues. And
Mm.
this is the only time you'll see them because they're terrified of people.
But
So
they'll come out when you're talking. I love
well,
that.
they're awake now and they're saying, hey, isn't it time to quit working?
Right? And Hella, I'm so sorry for the loss of your mom. What was her name
To you.
to you?
Yes.
Ah, I went through, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to some of our podcasts, but our listeners know like the last 18 months, I've been through a lot of grief and loss. And I know for a lot of our listeners, last night was a big grief and loss event in the United States. And, I think about what came up for me when you were talking. was how when we have big events that like we feel in our entire bodies, like the loss of a parent. I
Yeah.
lost my dad in May. Um, how it really does shake up your foundation and that driving need to figure it out, right? That driving need to what needs to shift because life is too short
Yes.
and what how do we need to do this? So I think about that with your first the first C of clarity, right? When you're working with clients, how do you get them to that point of clarity? Like if somebody was like, "Yes, I agree and I want to do this." What should they start asking themselves?
What do I really want? Like, what do I want out of life? I mean, when you listen to my story, um, I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want to lose touch with my friends. I didn't want to. So flip that around. And what do you want? I wanted to be able to spend time with my friends,
Mhm.
my kids. I wanted to enjoy my life. Um, and I wanted to have my business too, because I still
Mhm.
loved what I was doing.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
I've
mean, you
been
start off by,
thinking
yeah, what do you really want? And
right.
once you identify what you want, in your business and your life, then you can start looking at where am I now? And that's all part of clarity. When we don't have clarity, we're just stumbling around in the dark.
Well, I think stumbling around or also just doing tasks that may not be in alignment with what we really value. Because, I found with doing different contracts and having multiple businesses, like it is really easy to fill so many hours. And if you're not intentional about what do I want here? Right? How and I know we often talk about it on the show, but our calendars and marking times off for ourselves
Yeah.
first and you were talking about spending time with your family and yeah, it's people and I don't want to just say people because I think I do it to myself sometimes, but we can get sucked into this working hamster wheel, right? That
Oh,
if
yeah.
we're especially when we love what we do.
Well, that's just it, and I loved what I was doing in my other business. It was a design business. I mean, I absolutely loved it, and we were doing great work. And so it's easy to just get pulled in and do more and more and more. And that's why it's so important to have clarity. What are your priorities really? And at first my priority was building the business because I had kids to support, they had activities, there's mortgages, like there's
Right.
all of that stuff. And there's the other side of life. And like I said, the barista at Starbucks looked like she was having a whole lot more fun than I was.
Anytime you start to think somebody that's in customer relations is having more fun than you got to do an audit and a quick check, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
And I know some of them have a blast, but I've also had really dear friends work in those jobs, and they're not easy, right?
Yeah,
Um, so your second one was about your processes. Like,
yeah.
how did you shift from 80 hours a week to what you're doing now?
So I really got clear on what the priorities were, what needed to happen. So being an entrepreneur, I'm sure you can appreciate you start doing this and you start doing this and this and this and this. And before you know it, you're overwhelmed and you got so many things on the go. There's no way you can manage them all. And
Right.
so we start looking at what is it that you're doing, what's effective, what's not effective, and how do we streamline that? Because it's the processes that create predictability in our businesses. So when we don't have processes in place, it's the ideal situation to create chaos.
Oh.
because one day we're doing it this way, day we're doing it the next way, and we forget where we are, and processes sound really dull and boring. I admit it. I totally admit it. And we already run most of our lives on processes.
Oh, yeah.
Things
We
like,
love them here at Women Connected in Wisdom. Like, if you could see how many spreadsheets we have. But it's like, you and I talked before the show, we were debating whether we were having the show today or not.
yeah,
But one of the things that tipped it into a yes is um we have our processes. Like we have things, you've been lined up for months. You've been,
yeah,
and so I think even in times of crisis or even in times when things, when you're really not feeling up to it, if you have your processes in place, you can you can do it.
you can do it because you don't have to think about it so much. And the beautiful thing about processes is they simplify your business. They
Mhm.
make it flow more easily, and it's exactly what you're saying. So
Mhm.
I mean, and there I've had a lot of clients who've really kind of objected about, creating these processes because it's so stiff, and they want to be more creative, right?
Mhm.
But think about it. I mean, do you brush your teeth the same way every day?
Right? Right?
You start at the top right one day, the bottom left the next day. Um, and you laugh. It's kind of a crazy thought. So why do you do that in your business? Because
Correct.
when you start brushing your teeth in a different place every day, you brush away and your mind wanders and you go, oh man, where did I start? Am I finished? Did I miss
Right?
something? That's exactly what happens in our businesses. And so, in order to put those processes into place, you really have to zero in on what is it that I really need to do.
Right?
And so once you get those processes in place, and yes, it takes work and effort. And once you have them in place, it frees up your time, it increases your income, and it gives you personal freedom because you're not stressed and overwhelmed and thinking about your business 24/7. You can actually go off and have some fun.
Mm, I love that a lot. I I've been talking this next question I'm going to ask you. I've been talking about with a lot of people recently. Um how do you prioritize when you're for your own life or with your clients? Because I think that is a struggle for a lot of people is the prioritization of what is important when you're setting up your processes.
Right. So I'm pretty clear on what my values are.
Mhm.
So my values are always, I want to say top of mind, but they're always in the back of my mind in
Mhm.
everything that I do. Does it fit with my values? Because if it doesn't fit with my values, then I'm going to have resistance to doing it. I'm not going to do a good job. It's all of that. So my values always come into play. Really, what I do is I create a list of, here's the 500 different things that I need to do. And then I look at my goals. What are my most important goals? And so I put those things into my goals. And once they're in my goals, I can look at them and say, you know what? Doing this other thing, it's not a priority, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a system that works for me, and it's a system that each one of my clients has different little things that work for them. And so we look at the overall goals, and we work their process into something that helps them prioritize and makes sense for them. Because if it doesn't make sense for you, you're not going to follow it.
Right? I love that. I love that wisdom because we're in such a culture right now that people want to have us believe that everything's on fire and everything should be a priority, which is
Yeah.
just not sustainable. It's not doable, right? So filtering it through our values, filtering it through and creating goals and then actionable items. Yeah, I'm I appreciate that,
Well,
right?
and here's the other thing, you talk about everything being urgent. When you don't have processes in place, then you're not able to prioritize. And
Right.
you just, um, you work on whatever's screaming at you the loudest, right? And you're driven by the tyranny of the urgent, and
Right.
everything's urgent, right? And
Boy.
so once you have your processes in place, your goals established, you know what your values are, it starts to become pretty clear. At first, it's feels like a challenge, to follow the process and get it all done and, all of that stuff. And after a while, it just becomes automatic, and you just go, okay, I have these 50 things to do. Where do they fit? I can pick out what's most important.
I love that. As a longtime community organizer and also an inner player who believes in incremental steps, it fits right with what I do for myself and my clients too, because and it doesn't mean you can't vary sometimes, right? Like, because there are things that do pop up that need to be addressed, but they can even fit in your processes, like you when you're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at it. So I love what you're talking about here, Hella. Now,
Well,
when you talk about, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say the processes are the framework, right?
Right,
And when we have the processes in place, we we have the ability to be creative, because the important things just start to happen almost automatically. And then when that outlier comes in, we can be creative, and we can fit it in. It's possible.
right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love that, and I also love as somebody who does this on the regular, like those systems, those habits, then as the framework, then you do have more room to play and dance within it. So
Absolutely.
your third key you said is you. You want to talk a little bit about that one?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's you, because you're the center of your business, you're the center of your world, and everything revolves around you. So, we look at, what are the habits you need? What are the beliefs you need? In my case, I needed to believe I could be the woman who could have it all,
Mm,
you know? Um, and how do you create that? Do you have the energy that you need? Physical, emotional, mental energy? If we don't have energy, we just flop on the couch, right?
right,
Or we procrastinate and nothing ever happens. Um, you know, are we stressed? How do we work with our stress? Because stress doesn't disappear. We've all got stress in our lives. So how do we work with our stress? And
all right,
what's
so pause right there, Hella, because
okay?
especially from what we've been talking about today, we got a lot of women that are stressed in America and probably around the world. So, what do you do for stress personally?
Oh, I have a number of things I do. So I have my morning routines that set me up for the day.
Yes.
So, I get up and I have just a minute of we'll call it a minute of mindfulness. I
Mm,
get up and I exercise, because
hmm.
I'm a real morning person, and so
Me
I
too.
exercise. And the challenges we have with, you wake up in the morning and your mind is just racing and thinking about all
Right.
the, well, it's bringing your attention to your physical body. And
Hmm.
so once I've exercised, my mind's not racing anymore. I'm calm, I got it going, right? I make sure I make sure I get outside every day, right?
Hmm.
Because I have a I have a real connection to nature. My
Hmm.
previous business was in landscape architecture. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so I developed, and we worked on sustainability, which is all about the landscape and nature, and biophilic design, which is our connection to nature. To
Hmm.
the, I could go on and on and on, but I won't. And so I have a real connection to nature. So I spend some time outside, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's just hanging out in my backyard, watching for those deer, checking out the creek. Right now at this time of year, walking through, all the leaves and swishing through them. And it's just like, it's those simple things, right?
Hmm.
What else do I
Hmm.
do to manage stress? I make sure that, I mean, I have a home-based business. So I make sure that I have enough social connection. I make sure there's fun in my life. Because if we're not having fun, like it just drags us down, and that stress just builds and builds and builds, right? So it's simple little habits, simple little things, and when I haven't had enough fun and social connection, I can feel it, right? And it's like, well,
Right?
time to call up a friend. Hey, let's go do something. So
I
there's
love that. What do you love to do for fun? I heard you say that your kids are competitive skiers. Do you ski?
um, not anymore. I think I got skied out when my kids were skiing competitively.
Right?
I've also moved to a community that's far away from the ski hills, so it's not as convenient. So what do I like to do? There's gardening, there's sailing.
Mhm.
Sailing is incredible. Just the feeling of being on the water
Mhm.
in the open air. It's no motors or engines, or it's so peaceful. And I have a thing for water, so
Mhm.
which is why there's a creek in the back. So
Right?
yeah. Um, so what else do I like to do for fun? You know, uh, I like to I like to have deep conversations with people. I really get into deep conversations.
Mm.
Um, when I'm here on my own and I want to have some fun, I turn up the music and I just start dancing, right? And so I don't actually even have to go out to have fun. All I need, now my cats look at me like I'm crazy, and that's okay. It's like, wow, what are you doing now? And it's fun, when we dance, it activates every part of our brain.
Mhm.
So and it relieves stress, and it
Oh,
just
it
feels
does.
good.
It
It's like
does.
dancing with
Even
my
at
friends.
my worst times, if I dance, even for a minute or 2 minutes, it can shift everything for me.
Yeah.
Um, Years ago, I have a really funny story about that because years ago, I love Karen Drucker's music. Do you know Karen Drucker?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So I was dancing to one of her songs, and it just shifted my whole mood. And so I sent her a little note through her website, just giving gratitude for her music and her gift to
Yeah.
the world. And I told her I use it with my clients, I use it with myself. I recommended her work, and I was just so grateful. Never thinking that I'd hear from her again. Right? I just
Right.
thought it would go into the void. Well, she reaches out to me, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you made my day," and she's in San Francisco area, and she's like, "And oh, by the way, I'm gonna be in Atlanta in a couple of months. Do you wanna come to my retreat?" I'm like, "Well, yes.
Yes.
I will come dance with you personally." And we have since done some collaborations together. So, the power of music, I really resonate with that, with the dancing and having fun and connections, right?
Well, and
Um,
I was just gonna say the word that came up for me was connection. I mean,
mhm.
isn't that what this podcast is all about?
Right? About
Connecting,
connecting
right?
with ourselves and each other and our support
Yeah,
systems. Yeah, I was thinking about, you know, I was thinking about when we think about resistance, when we think about doing hard things, when we think about that, I always believe in the joy, right? Like being joyful while we do it, like while
yeah,
we do hard things, like that in itself. There was the poet, and I'm probably going to screw their name up, but I think it's Toy Derricate. I don't know if it's Derricate or Derricate, that says joy is an act of resistance. When we're in tough times, being in joy and accessing our joy and dancing, that in itself is an act of resistance, because we are not allowing the despair or not allowing the toughness of the situation to completely take us off our mission and our values and the work that we are tasked with. So I think
right.
that's important to think about today,
Yeah, it is. It is. There's a lot to be said for joy.
right?
Like, it's so simple.
Hmm.
It's so like, it's not happy, happy, happy.
Right?
It's a way of being, I mean, are you joyful about your life? And if I come back to the events from last night, which
Mhm.
I have to say, as a Canadian, I was shocked
Mhm.
when I heard. Um, and at the same time, if we look at our own lives and think about what's joyful about my life, there's always going to be that stuff going on out there, things we don't agree with, maybe things that get our back up. And what are we grateful for? What brings us joy in the moment, right? And for me, like that can just turn everything around.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I will say for me today, it was the connections and the solidarity of having groups of people that I could reach out to with my
Right.
authentic feelings and truth, and that is not something that I take for granted, right? And being able to walk outside and sit out among the fall colors and sit with the trees and know that, this moment will pass. We don't know what's coming, but trees have been here a long time, and some of my greatest teachers, right? You talk about the water. I'm a water baby too, Hella, and like being able to sit by the trees and the water
Yeah.
and be soothed by nature, which nature is not always easy breezy. Our dear friends and listeners in North Carolina who've just gone through some catastrophic um, hurricane situations that still don't have water, still don't have potable water in a lot of the places that they live. We know that Mother Nature is not always, Bambi.
Right. Right. Well, and yet, and if I draw on my previous career,
Mhm,
connecting with nature has
mhm.
has been proven to reduce our heart rate,
Right?
lower our cortisol levels,
Mhm.
increase the joy and happiness we feel. Like it's just,
It was
and
the first place I went to this morning. It was like I had to get outside. I made my cup of tea, put a little bit of my raw honey in
right,
it, went outside. It was like, all right, just breathe. That and just
right,
remembering to breathe, right? The joy of that,
yeah,
that having the ability to take a deep breath is, I think about that, and not always, folks don't always have that,
you're right. You're right.
you know? So.
I
I
mean,
know
there
you
are,
said you were recovering from an illness, and I recently went through a cold, and like I think I was like, oh, I just the joy of having health, right? Like
yes,
looking when I get stressed or am completely overwhelmed, I always call it old school. I don't know why I call it old school, but I start writing down my gratitudes, right? I mean, from little bitty things and looking around my space for things that bring me joy or bring me comfort, and not taking things for granted. Like
yeah.
really just yeah.
So here's the other thing, when like a lot of it's about self-care, that's where our energy comes in. And, if we
Mhm.
don't look after ourselves, how many times have you heard it? Put your own seatbelt on first, put your own
Right?
oxygen mask on first.
Mhm.
And so when that illness starts to come on, what's the priority? We talked about setting priorities, right? And so we are the priority. Can somebody else wait? Is it going to be the end of the world?
Right.
What's the priority here? And I just find if we look after ourselves first, if we really practice self-care, everything starts to fall into place.
Mm. I love that. And that we are allowed to rest. We talk about that often on this podcast because as women, sometimes we have this story that we're not allowed to rest. Or that, and it's okay to rest. It's okay to set it down. Um, I talk about this often in movement spaces, in social justice spaces. We can set it down. We got to pick it back up, but it's okay to set it down and let somebody
Right.
else carry it for a moment,
Yeah.
just like I'm kind of carrying the show today without my co-host. But it is, you know, having those connections for me, especially, I mean, I have a lot of great men in my life, but my women friends and my non-binary friends and those connections of folks that have our backs, right? In
Yeah.
business and in personal, and that we can be our authentic selves with. I think so. When I think about the you part of your three building, I love it. It seems so simple, Hella, and I know it's not.
Oh, it
Like,
is.
I
It's
know
very
that's why.
simple. It's
Okay.
it's very simple, and that's the beauty of it. So the concept is very simple.
Mhm.
It's clarity, processes, and you. How
Right.
much more simple can you get? And yet there's so much depth to every little
Mhm.
piece of that, and you're right, we have to give ourselves permission to take a break.
Right.
We don't give ourselves permission.
Well, and I would also say give ourselves permissions to work with a coach. Because I
Yeah,
find in my line of, because I'm also a coach and I employ coaches because I believe in them. What I have found, and even in my interplay work, right? We know these things are good for us. We know but it's so much easier to do in community,
it is.
or easier to do when somebody's walking beside you. And so, like, if somebody wants to work with you, Hella, how do they do that? What does that look like? How can they engage with you?
So that I mean, the easiest thing to do is probably look me up on my website. Um, it's freedomjourneys.ca. So the name of my business is Freedom Journeys, and remember the S on the journeys, because life is a journey. Building a
Mm,
business is a journey. Um, and from there, you can book a call with me. I have a variety of programs. Um, Most of my programs are one-on-one programs. So that I can, especially with a business owner, I mean, they want they want um, they want to deal with what's going on in their business,
mhm.
not what's going on in somebody else's business. I'm going to be running a program starting about mid-January. It's not even posted on my website yet, so it's
Okay.
very
Oh, hot
fresh.
off the press. Tell
Oh yeah,
us.
it's not even hasn't even hit the press yet. Um, it's a program to build confidence for women,
Mm.
and
Say
because
more about it.
yeah, so um, it's been pretty well documented that women have less confidence than men. And it's not a genetic thing. And I maintain that it comes down to our strengths. You know, things like building community.
Right.
And so it comes down to our strengths. And so um, when we build confidence, we feel better about ourselves. We increase the likelihood for success. I shouldn't say we increase the likelihood for success. We become more successful. Um,
Right.
Confidence affects every part of our lives, how we feel, our relationships, our success. It affects everything. And so, how do we build our confidence? I'm not a, oh man, how do I express this? I have nothing against men. I have some
Right.
great male friends, and I believe that um, I believe that women hold the key to our future.
Mm. I love the way you say that, Hella.
Well, because we're the ones who create community. We're the ones who can hold everybody together and everything together. So
Mhm.
in the male-dominated industry that I used to work in, they are now really wanting women in their businesses because they know that women create a better company, a community, and more success. And so, how do we as women build our confidence so that we can step up and live in, what I'm going to call still a man's world? We've come a long way, and I really believe in how far we've come, and I believe we can do more.
Amen, sister.
When women have the opportunity to thrive, we create a better world.
Right.
And so anyway, so I'm kind of getting off topic here.
That's
So
okay. I like where you're going.
It's strategies. It's what to do to build your confidence. There's some how-tos. The only way to really build your confidence is to take action and do it,
Mm,
right?
mm.
So there's some accountability in there, tips, tricks, strategies. There's
I
goals that
love
come
that.
into the picture always, always, always. So
Yeah. Well, when you launch it, be sure and tag us over at Women Connected in Wisdom podcast on
yeah.
Instagram, and we'll share it with folks. Because is it virtual or is it in person?
No, this one will be virtual.
Okay,
It'll be
cool.
virtual.
So folks all over the world can join you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Be sure. And y'all, in the show notes, I am going to put Helle's website and ways to connect with her on LinkedIn. So that way you can be tuned into that when that launches. That'll be. And when did you say that was going to happen, Hella?
Um, I'm hoping to get it up on my website next week.
Okay.
I've
Awesome.
got a couple of things that are pressing, those priorities,
Right.
and, and understanding the energy of the universe. I know that
Mhm.
it's going to come together. It's still, we're still at, I'm going to say the beginning of November.
Right.
So we still have a
Absolutely.
few months before we actually launch.
I
It's
love
going to be
that.
great. It's
We'll
going to be
we'll be looking forward to that. Well, every week when we start wrapping a show, Hella, we do a hashtag wisdom in action. And this is if you had to hashtag when you're thinking about intellectual wellness, when you're thinking about building your business without having it run your life, how would you condense that into a hashtag? What would you say?
the how-to. I know what it means to me. It means freedom to me.
Mm,
Um, how to build your business. So all my thoughts are not coming back to one hashtag that
mhm,
represents all of that. It comes back to things like freedom. Like it comes back to
mhm,
what we want.
mhm. You know how I would hashtag that is put hashtag find your freedom,
Yeah,
right? Because everything we
I like
talked
it.
about
I might
today,
feel that.
right? Absolutely. Feel free. I think everything we talked about today is finding your freedom,
It is.
right? What are your values? Get really clear on that, what you want in your world. What kind of world do we want to create? I think a lot of us are asking that question here
Yeah,
today. And then what does that mean for us? Like what are those steps in action? And I'm going to say whether it's in our business or it's in our world, right? Because I think you can use your same models to do for your social action or your volunteerism or your
yeah.
communities. I think you could do the same thing, getting really clear on your values and what processes you're going to use or what organizations are you going to be with and how to show up for that. And in a
Which is
way,
you.
right? In a way that doesn't overwhelm or take you down because we need our folks to be healthy. We need that self-care for community care. So
Well,
my hashtag this week, I think, is going to be self and community care. It's going to be both around this, around businesses, around next steps. Yeah, I think that it's one I use often, but it's one I need often.
we all need that. We all
Right?
need that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hella, I have so enjoyed our conversation today. Do you have any last words for our listeners or anything that you feel like, oh, I need to say that before we go?
Um, yeah, maybe. Nobody's going to hand you your success or your happiness on a silver platter. It's all you have to create it for yourself. There's no fairy godmother to wave her magic wand like Cinderella.
I wish.
So we have to create it for ourselves. We have to look after number one, and we have to know where we're going. We don't want to stumble around in the dark anymore. You know,
Right.
when we have that clarity and we look after number one, we're going to achieve our goals.
Mm. Thank you, Hella, for your wisdom. Thank you for being here today. Grateful to be connected, and we look forward to talking more with you.
Thank you so much. This has
Yeah,
been great.
so glad to know you. All right, y'all, we're wrapping episode 175. Um, Thank you for being here with us. Thanks for listening. We'd love your feedback. Connect with us over at LinkedIn at Women Connected in Wisdom Podcast, or on Instagram, or on Facebook or YouTube. We'd love to know your thoughts, and know what you're doing for self care this week. One of the things I'm going to be doing is Interplay Atlanta has a performance intensive where we're using interplay performance forms and tools to create community theater. So I don't know that I'd call it community theater, community performance, because we use movement and storytelling and voice. But happening this week in Little Five Points in Atlanta. If you're local and you want to join us, check it out on interplay.org. And you can always connect with myself or Shannon through our links in our show notes, and find us out in the community and come connect with us. But in the meantime, our wish for you is to be well, to be wise, and to be whole.